All right, let's jump right into this explainer. I want you to imagine your typical Monday morning alarm clock routine. It goes off at, say, 6:15 a.m. You hit snooze. It goes off again. You drag yourself into traffic, you grab an overpriced coffee, and spend another 8 hours under fluorescent lights, basically just waiting for Friday. We're taught to do this until we hit 65 years old, as if it's some sort of undeniable law of gravity. But here's the absolute truth we're going to unpack today. That 40-year grind to age 65, it isn't a law of nature at all. It's just a societal factory default. And, quite frankly, default settings are quietly killing your wealth.
Think about what you do when you unbox a brand new smartphone. Right out of the box, the brightness is literally blinding, the notifications are super annoying, and there's a dozen useless apps you definitely never asked for. So, what do? You spent the first hour manually changing everything because you intuitively understand that factory settings are designed for the manufacturer's convenience, not yours. Now seriously, ask yourself, why would your financial life be any different? The checking account your parents opened for you years ago, the retirement investments HR just automatically selected, that credit card you've had since college, these aren't optimized for your financial freedom. Because in the financial world, default usually just translates to profitable for the banks.
To see how this really plays out in the real world, let's look at Jake. Jake is our quintessential default user. He lives in Ohio, makes a solid $78,000 a year, drives a nice enough SUV, and always pays his bills on time. By all of society's default standards, Jake is crushing it. But at the end of the month, Jake actually has almost nothing left. And he tells himself the exact same lie millions of us do. I'll save more once I get my next raise. But Jake is actually a victim of the invisible upgrade, lifestyle inflation. Every promotion just becomes a slightly nicer apartment or a bigger TV. He incorrectly assumes a future raise is going to buy his freedom, never realizing that freedom isn't created by your income, it's created by the gap between what you earn and what you keep.
Now, what if you just tweak the start date setting? It completely overrides that default timeline. Picture this. Two people walk into a bank. Alex starts investing $200 a month at age 25, does it for just 10 years, and then completely stops. Done. Sam, on the other hand, waits until age 35 and then invests that same $200 a month for 30 consecutive years. So who wins at age 65? It's Alex. Alex's short 10-year investment completely crushes Sam's 30 years of consistent, disciplined saving. It's a timing trick that banks rarely advertise, simply because compound interest happening early actually costs the bank money. They profit way more when you're forced to rely on those late-life catch-up plans.
Section 1. The basic settings, flipping 4 financial switches. So, how do we actually start reprogramming this stuff? Let's see how plugging some tiny financial leaks can literally shave years off your timeline for exactly $0. You don't need to go get a second job, and you definitely don't need to pick the perfect stock. You just need to flip a few simple but profoundly impactful switches. Switch 1. Move your emergency fund. Stop letting traditional banks borrow your cash for free. Move it to a high-yield savings account and earn hundreds extra. Switch 2. Claim your employer's 401k match. Guys, it is literal free money. Ignoring it is exactly like turning down a portion of your own paycheck. Switch 3. Log into your retirement account and slash those invisible expense ratios by switching to low-cost index funds. Tiny 1% fees can compound into hundreds of thousands in lost wealth over a few decades. And switch 4. If you're eligible, utilize health savings accounts. It lets compound interest work for you completely tax-free.
Section 2. Intermediate settings, velocity banking.
Okay, once those basic settings are running on autopilot, we can step things up. We can upgrade our cash flow management using a highly effective yet kind of controversial tool called velocity banking. The default way to pay off a mortgage is, well, you send a check once a month for 30 years. Velocity banking flips that entire script. You open a home equity line of credit, a HELOC, and you actually use it as your primary checking account. So you deposit your entire paycheck directly into the HELOC, which instantly drives down the daily interest balance on the loan. Then you just pay your normal monthly expenses right out of that same line of credit. Whatever is left over at the end of the month, your surplus, automatically accelerates your mortgage payoff without changing your lifestyle at all. But a massive warning here. This requires absolutely ironclad discipline. Looking at the data from practitioners, about 60% of failures in velocity banking happen because people get tempted by all that available equity and blow it on a vacation or a kitchen renovation. If you lack discipline, this setting will absolutely hurt you.
Section 3. Developer Settings. Escaping the default tax code.
If velocity banking is for optimizing your debt, it's time to unlock the real developer settings for optimizing wealth.
We are going to bypass the IRS's default tax code during your retirement spending phase. Let's look at a guy named John. John followed all the standard default financial advice. He aggressively funded his tax-deferred 401k for 30 solid years, and it felt brilliant during his working years. But John fell into a massive structural trap. When he finally retired and started withdrawing that money, he got ambushed. Every single dollar he pulled from that tax-deferred account was taxed as ordinary income. That is the highest, most unforgiving tax bracket available. John optimized entirely for the accumulation phase and totally forgot to plan for the spending phase.
Now, the crucial workaround to John's trap revolves around this specific figure, $65,000. If you bypass the 401k default and instead build your wealth in a standard taxable brokerage account, you unlock this incredible hidden superpower. A single filer can cash out long-term capital gains, which is just profit on stocks you've held for more than a year, take home roughly $65,000 a year and owe exactly $0 in federal tax. You heard that right, zero. No deductions, no deferrals, a clean zero to the IRS.
But to maintain this zero tax reality, you really have to understand how the IRS stacks your money. Think of it like a bucket. Your ordinary income fills the tax brackets from the bottom up. So if you earn a little freelance income on the side, or if you claim Social Security early, that money sits at the bottom of the bucket and physically shoves your capital gains right up out of that 0% zone, pushing it into the 15% penalty zone. So to protect your 0% bracket, you must manually manage your income. You delay Social Security to keep the runway clear, you harvest your gains right up to the ceiling, and hey, if you're retiring overseas, make sure you stay under the 183-day residency limit in high-tax countries so a foreign government doesn't just overwrite all your careful planning.
And if we really want to escalate this to the ultimate wealthy developer setting, we have to look at a 3-word strategy baked directly into the Internal Revenue Code. It's called buy, borrow, die. This is the exact plumbing billionaires use to pull back the curtain on the tax code, but it's actually available at most major brokerages for everyday investors too. First, you buy appreciating assets. Then instead of selling them, which triggers that capital gains tax we just talked about, you borrow against them using a margin loan. Finally, you die and pass the assets on to your heirs.
So, why on earth does this actually work? Because under the tax code, loan proceeds are not considered income. You can spend millions in borrowed cash and pay exactly $0 in capital gains tax on it. And when you eventually pass away, the magical step-up in basis rule kicks in. Your heirs inherit the assets at their current market value, wiping out a literal lifetime of embedded capital gains tax entirely. The estate repays the loan, and the family keeps the rest, completely tax-free. It's brilliant.
Section 4. Redefining your retirement boundary.
For our final system upgrade, we have to completely rethink the ultimate default setting, age 65. Researchers have formulated retirement not as some fixed date circled on a calendar, but as what they call an optimal stopping problem. What they mathematically proved is that retirement shouldn't be based on your age at all. Instead, it's a shifting, highly personalized boundary. It's the exact mathematical moment where your wealth, your subjective life expectancy, and your income all intersect. Chronological age is just one tiny variable in this equation, not the finish line.
The researchers mapped out a specific boundary curve, separating 2 distinct zones. If your wealth is below that boundary line, you are in the continuation region, meaning, mathematically speaking, you should keep working. But the very second your wealth crosses that line into the stopping region, mathematical logic dictates you should retire immediately to maximize your lifelong utility. Waiting any longer than that exact moment is just mathematically suboptimal.
Interestingly, the math in this paper also solves a huge mystery that economists call the retirement consumption puzzle. See, most people assume they're going to spend way more money when they retire, right? Lots of free time. But the data shows consumption actually drops. Why? Because the marginal utility of your money fundamentally changes when you no longer have to pay to escape your job. When you finally own your free time, you just don't need to spend as much money on conveniences or expensive weekend getaways just to cope with the stress of a 40-hour work week.
Which brings us to the core truth of this entire explainer. Because default settings kill wealth, we have to realize that true wealth isn't measured by a 6-figure salary, the fancy logo on your car, or crossing some default chronological age of 65. True wealth is measured entirely by the freedom you have over your own calendar. It's the ability to wake up and ask yourself, how many Mondays can I simply choose not to work? So as you look at your own financial dashboard today, I want to leave you with this one thought. Which of your factory default settings are you going to manually change today?